Hello, Sapphire Steel supremacy has happened, and you've got a bunch of options basically to play with. And the last video we pretty much covered all of the popular decks, but I'm going to use an example sort of in this video of what decks you can play in the set because it seems like Oswald's doing very well. Artifacts is trying to push something as well, which is also I think really good. We've got a lot of standard players who've been playing for a while that are just upgrading their wheel lists and their no wheel lists. I've realised that Alice still works quite well in a meta where decks struggle to kill things that have 4 health. So, something that has 4 health and has ward is actually pretty good. So, we're going to just go through each one, and then, of course, hopefully, this video could be a way to help you pick whichever Sapphire Steel list you want to play in your Set 7 journey because Set 7 is probably going to be very dominated by Sapphire Steel. And I'm not sure really about the positives of each one. I think a lot of this leans into how you'd like to play a deck. And if it's not really your play style, you might be not preferring to play that list. Maybe it could be meta based as well. Maybe a lot of people are teching for an Oswald build, but they're not teching for say an Artifacts build or a wheel build or something like that. So there's loads of options. And I think they all sort of have their strengths, and yeah, you've got to find which ones for you really. Find which ones fits. And we start off sort of with the Oswald builds. A couple of these lists I've had to take from other players because I'll be lie. I'm an old school Sapphire Steel player. I've been playing it sort of since it was a deck. And Oswald decks were always the sort of the joke one that a lot of people made jokes about. And I just don't really get on with the playstyle. I don't really like including all of these items in here and then working for this big Tamatoa payoff. I think it's undeniable that it's a good deck and it does win things. It's won quite a lot. It's performing very well for a lot of players. But me personally, I'm just not really enjoying the Oswald deck as much as other decks, other Sapphire Steel decks that you can draw right now. But yeah, this is Jeremy's, one of the people in Zan's podcast. I believe his friend as well, and they all worked on this list together, and it just did amazing that weekend. Like it really put Oswald on the map, taking like the majority of the top cut as well. And it looks like this is the standard way to build it. I know going forward he's done some changes and trying out the new legendary queen, or not the new legendary queen, a legendary queen, which is a good option. I think this is a very good build in a Sapphire meta where you're just trying to you play a bit more of a slower game plan and you're trying to get giant Tamatoa hits and you can take those turns off. But when I look at this, I always think it might struggle a bit into a more low to the ground meta. You still get that bell turn one singing Let the Storm Rage on singing Strength, but that's all you really have. You haven't got a Calhoun or a Smee or something like that, so they should be able to go wide and quest out before you get really any involvement. And into that matchup, Oswald maybe won't be that of an important of a card because you're trying to fight for board and slow this aggro deck down, especially with a lot of people enjoying the Lady and the Tramp deck. So I think into a more slow meta where everyone's playing these ramp and then dime tap a big Tamatoa, Oswald has an advantage of being like a bunch of high rolls just built in. Like I've played against this and they'll just ink a card, look at the top card, and it'll be like a workshop, and hey, you get a free workshop. And then I played one as well. They got 2 free dimes as well, and I'm trying to play my slow ramp game plan, and they're getting this chance to basically every turn. When they ink, they get a chance to get something really valuable. Of course, they can bottom deck, but to be honest with you, it doesn't not the worst in the world to bottom deck. Sometimes it might be like, all right, I wouldn't mind a free item here, but I also could bottom deck the Zeus. That's the one way to remove their Tamatar. Oh, I've done that. That's a bit unfortunate. But overall, yeah, I think it has a lot of strengths. I think a lot of people will play this as well. I think there's a thing in TCGs, if you have the ability to play the unfair game and do unfair things, you usually just take that. And Oswald has the ability to do that. If you manage to get decent, like if you get a free dime and a free workshop, that's pretty good value. Playing the Scrooge in as well, I think really like Scrooge for controlling the board. The Bell Tipo Scrooge is pretty good to stop aggro decks, to be honest with you, but it's only being 2 Tipos and no sales in here. Looking to get the Rampant on 3 is quite a mix for me, but I think this deck will continue to grow, continue to be better. I think it can morph as well. As the meta sort of figures itself out, it can figure out how it wants to tackle the meta and still be the Oswald thing that it wants to do. But it's probably a deck I probably won't mention that much on the channel, and like unless it wins another event. Just for me personally, it's one I won't replay too much. I've noticed in Europe it doesn't get that much representation compared to in America, where it gets tons of representation and tons of people play it. And the second one is, again, I probably won't talk too much about these, and again, I've had to take it from other players. Jonathan Lamb's list. Jonathan Lamb is a amazingly good player, probably the most decorated Sapphire Steel player out there, probably the best, the GOAT, or however you want to word it. just an awesome player, and he's sticking with the whole new world build. And the whole new world build, I think what it allows you to do is it unlocks the ability to play a more toolbox based deck where you can do these crazy like one-off cards and two X's of cards, and just basically include a larger amount of cards and all spread out because you get to play the whole new world and look for them. You can play the visions as well, and look, there's just a ton of littered off one-offs and two X's in here just to get a nice spread of what you can do with this deck. Like one off grab your swords, a few Tinkerbells, and everything like that. It's just so awesome. I'm not saying any Scrooges in there, but maybe that just doesn't fit the whole new world game plan. But definitely, I think this is the he's always been as well. Going later on, if we look at standard whole new world lists, and then we look at his like last set, he was on Tipo into Pleakley, or play Simba into Pleakley, which was really not what anyone else was doing, but he got the best results. So I think we definitely have to go back and say, if you want to build a whole new world-based list, look at Jonathan Lamb's list. He's always performing the best. So yeah, I really don't have much to say on this. I'm sort of been veering away from playing whole new world builds. Um, as the sets have gone on. I've just felt we've had better card draw and other options, but definitely getting 7 cards a turn is not bad, and especially in this meta where everyone's playing Hiram and getting tons of card draw anyway, and playing Tamatoa to get their items and getting tons of card draw. Um, you know, Giving them a fresh 7 isn't the worst thing in the world because they already have probably 7 cards in hand, so you aren't really getting them back in the game. You're just resetting their hand. So I think there's some strength there as well. I'm definitely sure there'll be a lot of people still on Whole New World. But yeah, I think a lot of people just realizing there's different draw options and different ways to build the deck. Of course, standard like Sapphire Steel has always been built with Whole New World, like back in the day. But we've realized that you can build it in different ways going forward. But yeah, definitely he is the player to look out for if you want a Whole New World build. I've named this one after Justin and Dave. They were the first two people I saw playing this. I don't know if this has become very standard for no wheel builds. I'm pretty sure Sky has his own approach to playing no wheel builds. I'm pretty sure he's still going to be wanting to play that Quill on 3. But Jack Shadows and Attack for 2 have got this really interesting attempt at it, and it's doing this 1-2-4 game plan of you play your pop score, maybe get a bell out, and then you have a bunch of ramp based on the turn 2 with the Tipo and the sail there. So you can play your Scrooge or your Hiram the next turn and just basically have a really play that sort of red blue game plan of playing one. Sorry, I sort of had to have a little coughing fit there. Playing that red blue game plan of like play the item on 1, on turn 2 you ramp, and then on turn 3 you play a 4 drop, which used to be Hiram or Tala, but now we've got Scrooge. It's pretty awesome. I think Quill as well as in there at ramp. It's your backup. You can use it. You could probably include a grab it. Great Stone Dragon as well. This is my attempt at one of their builds, but it's probably only a few card difference. Of course, I'm not taking their build. This is their creation. I'm not even sure how many card difference, probably 5 or so card difference here. But I've just seen them use their Great Stone Dragon in there, use Fire the Cannons to attack some of the more aggro based metas. But yeah, the items here are just to give Scrooge more hit targets. So he's got 12 uninkable items to get and 2 more items as well. So he's got 14 items to hit. So he has a very high chance of actually getting an item when he wants it. But you can, of course, in an Oswald build, include a bunch of other items. So your Scrooge is pretty much always going to hit. But some of them can be quite dead items, like Shield of Ardell or Ardeen or whatever it's called. Is just terrible to hit. It's not really a great item, I think, in my opinion. So you kind of really want to hit a popsicle, but the next best thing is like a Quill that's kind of a standard card in Sapphire Steel anyway, and if not, it's an inkable, so that's fine. And I think it's just very consistent what it wants to do. It wants to hit that 1-2-4, and then the 4 drop is both great. You're either going to find a popsicle to play, or you're going to play a higher and pop your popsicle that you played turn 1. And then you just get to getting the tower out, recycling, getting the dime out, dime tapping tower, Tamatoa for a huge amount of lore. So, and you've got the Bell, the Pete, and getting the Scrooge down on 4 because that's kind of the game plan, and that's kind of the difference between the Oswald builds. We have 8 options to ramp on 2. Getting that down like will lock down out so many aggro based decks because it's a 4-4 and they've probably been playing 3-3s or 1-4s or whatever at best up to that point. So you can kind of start locking the board out. So I think in my opinion this is how no wilds will look going forward. Of course we haven't got a Tinkerbell, we haven't got a Grab Your Swords, which is 2 cards that you'd expect to see in Sapphire Steel, but with this build you're trying to get that 1-2-4 a bit more often. You're trying to ramp on 2 and play that 4 drop down. So You don't really need to get to that. You're not going to be doing like Smee on two, Quill into Tinkerbell into grab your swords. None of that shenanigans is happening here. You're just trying to get that 1-2-4 to begin with. So I think it's a really cool list. I think it's definitely another one that we're going to see. I could probably go over at the end as well how much of a meta share I think each one of these will take. On top of Sapphire Steel just taking the entire meta share. This is my attempt at more of an artifact style list that you've seen him play in the LCC, and he played at the Battle Bear event. It's very similar to Kiwi. I think you could actually probably shift the word Kiwi off because after playing it for enough, the playstyle of the deck is so different. Like I say, the minor differences is you've got Lawrence's in there for Alice, no Plutos. Um, but what the deck is trying to achieve is more grinding, resource heavy. You work very hard with the manas and trying to put pressure on and win board. That it does feel very different to Kiwi, and I've made some changes to Kiwi as well, and I'll cover them in my next slide. But yeah, it plays this sort of grinding, slower game plan. I don't think I just put one Baymax in here for testing purposes, but I think you could keep that at 2 cogs worth. I was just trying to test out how a Baymax would perform in this list, and to be fair, quite good, especially with the Smees and the Lawrences and everything like that, and trading and stuff like that. Seems a very good card to try out, but I'd probably maybe putting Artifacts list on the back burner for a bit whilst I keep going ahead with the Alice standard Kiwi list. But yeah, it plays this grinding sort of game plan where you want to resource people out, and it will feel very much like Ruby Amethyst felt like back in the day. It will be unlikely that you'll be racing ahead and be able to quest for a ton of lore, but it will also be very likely that you will have a bunch of cards in hand and you have a bunch of resources and a bunch of answers and stuff like that. So it does aim to play this grinding match, man, and it's very much was I would agree is built to kill Ruby Sapphire, which we're getting to a point now where I don't know how much Ruby Sapphire you would see. I still think it's very good into say an Oswald deck, maybe not into this sort of ramp deck because as again you play the Scrooge down on 3 and you lock out like all of these characters from being able to do much effective work. Lawrence would be the best one to challenge it, but then that's still you're just running a Lawrence in and they can work towards their item shenanigans. So I very much like it. I think it's really good. I think it will definitely stick around. Um, he's an amazing player and he puts a lot of work into the list as well. So yeah, I think this style, this more, it's sort of like RP light or not even RP light. It's like RP's like Sapphire Steel's RP. It plays to play this resource heavy grinding game. You always end up getting the Porpsicles and the Hiems working off, and then the Tamatowers to refresh the hand and get you some more items. So you're pretty much cycling throughout the entire of the game as well. So yeah, I very much like this list, and I think if that sort of old RP style that we had in like set 2 and 3, and sort of going forward, so I'm very under the weather still. Going forward was like your sort of game plan. I think definitely this is a list to look at. Try it out, and again, I need to remove the words Kiwi Bird here. It's really not that sort of list. You don't really aggro them, you don't really race them. You play this slower, more trying to find good trades, trying to out resource them, and sort of game plan. So awesome list. And the one that I'm surprised is still performing that well and has actually brought me back to it. So thank you very much for everyone who's been playing this list because I'll admit, yeah, other players were saying it's not great, and I got in testing and it was not performing right at the start. But I think we've got to put some work in, and it seems to be, yeah, Alice Pluto is still sort of working for me, and it's working for a lot of people out there. So we've definitely gone back on it, and yeah, as you can see, there are fairly minor differences when we actually swap over to what you'd see in a Kiwi list to an Artifacts list, but because we're playing this 1-4 and we're trying to protect it and basically just aggro out the game plan, um, it switches the deck up so much. You could ink all of this Hiram, Porpsicles, uh, Tamatoa stuff and just play Alice Pluto, Cogsworth it up and just race them if you wanted to. Whereas this, you couldn't really set up a board state where you could race them as hard. If people were just slinging removals and going to be able to take trades with your 3/3s and your 4/4 is only Lawrence is the only thing that's sticking out, so you could let the Storm Rage on it and then take it out. Whereas this year it's that same game plan where we're setting up these really awkward board states. We're completely racing them. We now have Bell turn 1 who can sling removal to make it even more awkward for them. So yeah, I think it really lands on being a different playstyle. And to be honest with you, I haven't posted this list anywhere because I test and I have a private. I just do the little private thing on Dreamborn. It's not like mega or anything important. A more like really aggro style attempt at the list because this is great and it works. And like Zeus, Big Tamatoa, they're awesome cards. But if we are aiming for this aggro game plan where we want to close the game out quickly, we want to ward up resist, why don't we really go in on that? And why don't we drop the Zeuses We have Zeus targets, but Zeusing their Tamatoa is not that bad. It's really only would want to Zeus a Maui shark. Um, Tamatoa is great for resources, but if we're getting the Alice Pluto Cogsworth lock in, especially against a steel matchup, we'll just be able to race them and win. We don't need to sit there back and draw more cards and resource them out. We can just go for it. So why not just completely go in on that game plan? A couple docks back in, just love dock. But also as well, if you're focusing very much in on trying to get that Smeon 2 or that 2 drop, if you're trying to go Bell, 2 drop Alice, Pluto, Cogs, at no point where you're able to set up the item for the Hyrum, so the Hyrum hasn't got a payoff, and sometimes you're gonna have to ink all of that stuff just to get to it. So having the dock as like a possible top deck into, just gas getting you back into the game just seems quite great. But again, I don't want to go too heavy on that. I don't want to play 4 docks. I just want to play a couple docks and have that chance to, like kickstart my game plan if it's going quite slowly or whatever. So yeah, I've been testing this out, playing a few games of it. It feels great. It feels like I'm basically just slowly going back to my set 6 cards. I think a lot of people mentioned Gantu as well. I don't think Gantu works right now because Gantu is very good in a popular red meta because they don't really have brilliant answers for it. It's like they have to run into it and trade it. But into a steel meta, it's like he's the biggest strength target of all time. Even if you can Alice ward him up, that'll be cheese and you maybe get it once or twice. But overall, I just think he's kind of lost game plan. So I kind of tried to build it so you could basically full send for Bell turn 1 every game, and if you don't, you land on a lot of 2 and 3 cost cards, so you get to find a curve there anyway. But I think these sort of lists, all of them, they're going to be at a very good meta share. I think the most popular one is in America for some reason seems to be Oswald. Seems to be like everywhere, like everyone loves Oswald in America. Whereas I've seen the Artifact style one take more popularity in Europe and Kiwi birds as well. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn or whatever the expression is in the country you're in. But it seems to be doing it well as well. It seems to be performing and getting to high cuts. I think they've all got their place to shine. Maybe the whole new world one is not going to see as much play, and you're already going to see those hardcore, old school Sapphire Steel players play it. So Joe Lam is pretty much going to top 4 regional still with it because he's just that good. But yeah, I think Oswald and the Artifacts ones will take a large meta percent share. Um, I think Kiwi as well will probably be third and maybe even be on the same level as the Artifacts one. And then I expect after a while of playing, we're going to end up on lists like this, and they're going to be the ones that actually take the largest meta share. They're very consistent in what they want to do. They have good game plan into pretty much every matchup. They're really they can do the artifacts list thing. They can do the Oswald thing of getting a bunch of items out and dime tapping them for a bunch of lore. They can control in the aggro matchups. They can do quite a lot, and I think all rounded, this is what we're going to end up seeing of lists. Like popular and the most played lists, and the ones that do the well at the most, that does the best at events, the most well does the best at events. So if you wanted to jump the shark and jump ahead, like try these sort of lists out. They're really cool. I think as well though, for me personally, I've tried this over a weekend and it just was not going my way. And I'm pretty sure I can look back on that weekend and say I was inking wrong, I was mulliganing wrong, I was playing it wrong. And it's not to say that I couldn't learn how to play it properly and learn how to play it better, but at this point I'm so kiwi pilled that I'm getting the best results with this deck. So I think still overall it's big preference on what you want to play. I think they've all got their strengths. Um, but yeah, these are all the sort of Sapphire Steel lists that are emerging right now. I don't know if any more architects will come. Like it kind of covered all the bases here, but yeah, it's a fun list. Pick which one you like. Definitely try and test as many as you can. They're all great and they all seem to be winning.